Imagine everything is taken from you. Not some of it, all of it. Your home, your work, your possessions, the manuscript you spent years writing, the clothes off your body, your name, replaced by a number tattooed into your skin. And then the people, your parents, your brother, your wife, everyone you love, torn away and murdered, while you are kept alive to labor in the cold under conditions designed to break the human spirit before they end the human life. Imagine being stripped down to nothing, to a starving body in a death camp, with no reason to believe you will survive the week, surrounded by evidence that meaning is a luxury the universe never actually promised anyone. Now imagine that in the middle of that, in the worst place human beings have ever built, a man discovered something that not only kept him alive, but became one of the most important insights of the 20th century about how to live. Not a comforting slogan, not a way of pretending the horror wasn't real, something harder and truer than that. He discovered that even when everything can be taken from a person, one thing cannot. And that this one thing, small, invisible, easy to overlook, is the source of a meaning that suffering cannot destroy and circumstances cannot touch. His name was Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist before the war and a prisoner during it, and what he found in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany became the foundation of a school of psychology and a book that has helped millions of people face their own darkness. This is not a video about positive thinking. It is a video about what a human being can find and hold on to in a place where there is seemingly nothing left to hold. Viktor Frankl was a Viennese psychiatrist and neurologist who, before the Second World War, had already begun developing his own approach to the human mind. He came of age in the same city as Freud and Adler, absorbed their ideas, and then diverged from both to pursue a question he believed they had underestimated, the question of meaning. But his theories were still forming when history intervened in the most brutal way imaginable. Frankl was Jewish, and in 1942 he and his family were arrested and deported. Over the next 3 years he was imprisoned in a series of Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz and Dachau. What he endured there is almost beyond description, and Frankl himself was careful never to sensationalize it. He lost nearly everyone. His father died in the camp at Theresienstadt. His mother and brother were killed at Auschwitz. His wife, Tilly, died at Bergen-Belsen. A manuscript containing his life's work, sewn into the lining of his coat, was taken and destroyed when he arrived at Auschwitz. He was subjected to starvation, forced labor in freezing conditions, constant proximity to death, and the systematic effort of an entire apparatus designed to reduce human beings to numbers and then to corpses. And yet, and this is the fact that makes Frankl's life extraordinary, he did not merely survive. He observed. Even inside the camp, the psychiatrist in him kept watching, kept thinking, kept asking why some prisoners held on to their humanity while others lost it, why some found a reason to keep living while others simply gave up and died. He was, at the same time, a prisoner suffering the worst that human beings can inflict, and a scientist studying the deepest question of human existence under the most extreme conditions it has ever been asked. What he learned in that impossible position became the basis of everything he taught afterward. After liberation, Frankl returned to Vienna, and in a burst of a few short days, wrote the book that would make his findings available to the world. It was eventually translated into English as Man's Search for Meaning, and it has since become one of the most influential books of the 20th century. In it, Frankl set out not the horror alone, but the discovery he made within it, a discovery about meaning that he believed applied not only to the camps, but to every human life, including yours. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. At the center of what Frankl discovered is an observation so simple and so profound that it can reorganize a person's entire understanding of their own suffering. In the camps, everything was taken from the prisoners: their possessions, their families, their health, their dignity, their control over even the smallest details of their lives. And yet Frankl noticed that something remained, something the guards could not confiscate, no matter how total their power. The prisoners could still choose their attitude. They could still decide, inwardly, how they would meet what was being done to them. Frankl wrote that everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This was not a naive claim. Frankl was not saying that a positive attitude could stop the suffering or prevent the deaths. He watched countless people die around him, including people of great spirit. What he was saying was something more precise and more durable. That even in a situation of total external powerlessness, a space of inner freedom remains. That between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a gap. Small, sometimes almost invisible, but real. And in that gap lies the whole of human dignity. He observed this freedom in action. He saw men who walked through the barracks comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. Their number was small, Frankl noted, but they offered proof of something essential. That a person's inner freedom, their capacity to choose who they would be, could not be taken even in the camps. These men could not change their circumstances in any way, but they could decide what those circumstances would make of them. They could refuse to let the horror turn them into something less than human, even as it destroyed their bodies. This is the first and most fundamental of Frankl's insights, and it applies far beyond the camps. Whatever is happening to you, however powerless you feel, however much has been taken, however little control you have over your circumstances, there remains a domain that is yours alone. The domain of your response, of the attitude you take toward what you cannot change. Frankl proved, under the most extreme conditions imaginable, that this inner freedom survives when everything else is gone, and that it is the ground on which a meaningful life, even a suffering life, is built. Frankl's central disagreement with the psychology of his time came down to a question about what most fundamentally drives human beings. Freud had argued that the primary human motivation is the pursuit of pleasure, the will to pleasure. Adler, whom Frankl also studied, emphasized the drive for significance and superiority, the will to power. Frankl, drawing on what he had witnessed, proposed a third, and he believed, deeper motivation, the will to meaning. The idea that what human beings most fundamentally need is not pleasure and not power, but a reason. A sense that their life and their suffering means something. The camps gave Frankl overwhelming evidence for this. He observed that the prisoners who survived, when survival was possible at all, were very often those who had something to live for, a task left unfinished, a person they longed to see again, a meaning that pulled them toward the future. And those who lost their sense of meaning, who could no longer find any reason to endure, frequently died soon after, even when they were not the weakest physically. Frankl watched this happen, a prisoner who gave up on the future, who stopped believing there was any point in holding on, would often decline and die within days, the loss of meaning preceding the failure of the body. Frankl was fond of a line from Nietzsche that captured what he had seen. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. The prisoners who had a why, a meaning, a purpose, a reason that reached beyond the present suffering, could endure almost anyhow, any conditions, any degree of hardship. The meaning did not remove the suffering, but it made the suffering bearable, because it placed the suffering inside a larger story in which it was not simply pointless torment, but part of a life that still had direction and worth. This is why Frankl believed the search for meaning is the central human task, not the pursuit of happiness, which he thought could not be pursued directly and could only ever ensue as a side effect of living meaningfully, not the avoidance of pain, which is impossible in any full human life, but the search for meaning, the finding of a why that can carry you through any how. Frankl saw the tragic consequences, both in the camps and later in his psychiatric practice, of what happens to a human being when that why goes missing. He called the resulting condition the existential vacuum, the sense of emptiness, boredom, and meaninglessness that afflicts people who have no purpose to organize their lives around. And he came to believe that much of modern suffering, even in comfortable and safe conditions, stems from this vacuum, from lives that have everything except a reason. If meaning is what human beings most need, the practical question becomes unavoidable. Where is it actually found? And here Frankl offered one of his most useful contributions, a clear account of the three main ways a human being can discover meaning in life, available to anyone in almost any circumstance. The first path is through creating a work or doing a deed, through what we give to the world. This is meaning found in achievement, in contribution, in the act of bringing something into being that would not exist without you. It is the meaning of the work you do, the things you build, the tasks you complete, the difference you make. For Frankl, the unfinished manuscript he longed to rewrite was one of the threads that pulled him toward survival, a deed left undone, a contribution he still needed to make. This is the path most people think of first when they think of meaning, and it is real, but it is only one of three. The second path is through experiencing something or encountering someone, through what we take from the world, and above all, through love. Meaning is found not only in what we accomplish, but in what we experience, in beauty, in truth, in nature, in art, and most profoundly in the love we have for other people. Frankl described how, in the depths of the camp, marching in the freezing dark toward a day of brutal labor, he found his mind turning to the image of his wife. And in contemplating her, in the love he felt for her, he understood something he would later write down: that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which a human being can aspire, and that a person who has nothing left in this world may still know bliss, if only for a moment, in the contemplation of the person they love. He did not yet know whether his wife was alive. It did not matter to the meaning he found. The love itself, and the experience of it, was enough to fill that terrible moment with significance. The third path is the one that made Frankl's philosophy unlike almost any other, and it is the one that speaks most directly to the worst place imaginable. It is meaning found through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. Frankl was clear that we should never seek out suffering, and that suffering is not necessary for meaning where it can be removed. But when suffering is unavoidable, when you face a situation you cannot change, a loss you cannot undo, a fate you cannot escape, there remains the possibility of meaning in how you bear it. Frankl wrote that when we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That in accepting an unavoidable suffering with courage and dignity, a person can achieve a meaning that no comfortable life could ever provide. The way a person meets an unchangeable fate, the attitude they take toward suffering that cannot be avoided, becomes itself an achievement, a final and profound opportunity to make their life meaningful even at its hardest point. These three paths mean that meaning is never entirely unavailable. Even when you can no longer create, even when you can no longer experience, there remains the freedom to choose your attitude toward what you cannot change. And in that choice, meaning survives. Frankl did not intend his findings to remain in the camps. He built them into a form of therapy he called logotherapy, from logos, the Greek word for meaning, and its principles offer a practical way of orienting a life. Here is how his insight translates into your own circumstances, whatever they are. The first movement is to stop asking what you want from life and start asking what life is asking of you. Frankl described this as a fundamental reversal of the usual question. Most people ask what they can get, what will make them happy, what they are owed, what life should be providing. Frankl proposed that this question leads nowhere, and that the meaningful life begins when you turn it around. Life, he said, is essentially putting a question to each of us, and we answer not with words, but with our lives, with our actions, our choices, our response to what we are given. In any situation, the question becomes, what is being asked of me here? What response would make this moment, even this difficult moment, meaningful? This reversal moves you from the passive posture of waiting for life to satisfy you into the active posture of responding to what your particular life is calling you to do. The second movement is to locate your why. Frankl's Nietzschean insight that a person with a why can bear almost any how is directly practical. When you are struggling, when the how of your life feels unbearable, the question to return to is the why. What is the meaning that this difficulty serves? What are you enduring it for? Who or what needs you to continue? A concrete, specific reason, a person you love, a task you must complete, a contribution only you can make, has the power to make an otherwise unparallelable situation bearable. The work is to find yours and to hold on to it, especially in the moments when the suffering makes it hard to see. The third movement is to find the meaning available through the three paths, especially when one is blocked. When you cannot create, when illness or circumstance takes away your ability to work and contribute, turn to what you can still experience, to love and beauty and connection. And when even that is taken, when suffering becomes unavoidable and nothing can be done to change it, remember the third path, the meaning available in how you bear what cannot be changed. This is not a consolation prize. Frankl insisted it was among the highest forms of meaning a human being can achieve, to face an unchangeable fate with courage, and in doing so, to demonstrate the freedom and dignity that no circumstance can destroy. The fourth movement is to embrace what Frankl called tragic optimism, the capacity to remain oriented toward meaning even in the face of what he called the tragic triad of pain, guilt, and death. Tragic optimism is not the denial of suffering, and it is not the belief that everything happens for a good reason. It is something more mature and more durable, the ability to say yes to life in spite of everything, to find meaning even in the presence of the worst that existence contains. Frankl believed that the tragic and negative aspects of life can be turned into something positive, that suffering can become achievement, that guilt can become the opportunity to change oneself, and that the awareness of death can become the very thing that presses us to act meaningfully while we still can. Tragic optimism is the refusal to let the darkness of life have the final word without ever pretending the darkness isn't real. Viktor Frankl walked out of the concentration camps having lost almost everything a human being can lose, and having found something almost no one else could have found in that place, a reason to affirm life anyway. Not because the suffering was worth it, not because there was some hidden purpose that justified the horror. He never said such things, and he would have been contemptuous of anyone who did. What he found was smaller and infinitely more powerful than a justification. He found that meaning is available to a human being even in the worst place imaginable, because meaning does not depend on circumstances being good. It depends on the response we bring to circumstances as they are. This is the gift Frankl brought out of the darkness, and it is the reason his insight has outlived the men who imprisoned him. Whatever you are facing, whatever has been taken from you, whatever suffering you cannot escape, whatever emptiness or loss or fear you carry, Frankl's life is proof that meaning remains possible. Not easy, not automatic, but possible. Because the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose your attitude toward what you cannot change, cannot be taken from you by any circumstance, any loss, or any darkness, no matter how complete. Frankl liked to say that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. The task of a human life, then, is to find that why, the meaning that will carry you through whatever how you are given. It may be a person you love, it may be a work you must complete. It may be the simple, immense decision to meet an unchangeable suffering with dignity rather than despair. Wherever you find it, it is the thing that makes a life not merely endurable, but meaningful, even at its hardest. You will not choose everything that happens to you. Much of it you cannot control at all. But there is a space that remains yours. The space of your response, your attitude, the meaning you decide to make of what you are given. Frankl found that space in a place designed to extinguish it entirely, and he held on to it, and it held on to him. Whatever your own worst place turns out to be, that same freedom is waiting there for you. It is the last thing that can be taken, which means, in the end, it is the first thing worth building a life upon.